Welcome to iCave Answers, where we are answering all of your Apple questions, so let's get straight into it. And in this video, sleep or shut down Macs, MacBook Air sizes, Apple using back to school to shift old stock, different chips in iPhone 14 and Pro, are A13 displays a waste of money, upgrading memory versus storage in Apple Silicon, next-gen display chips, wall mounting an iMac, will the Mac Pro still look like it does now with Apple Silicon, WWDC invites, 7.2-inch iPhones, Apple making their own TVs, and universal control over Ethernet. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell. The first question comes from Team Kinetix, iCave Answers. Is it better to shut down a Mac or let it sleep when not in use? Now, I would personally have to say that sleeping your Mac most of the time is definitely the best thing to do. They have a feature called Power Nap, which has been around for a number of years now, and what happens is basically while it's sleeping, it can activate your kind of efficiency cores in the background, grab your mail, make sure that everything is ready for you as soon as you wake that computer back up, and we've seen how quickly these computers wake from sleep. That's why Craig Federighi was so excited when he just picked up the lid of that MacBook. So yeah, let it sleep most of the time. However, it is still worth doing a reset maybe once a week. And the reason for that is there is still going to be memory leaks in some software. It's not an Apple issue, it's potentially different developers. Although Apple have certainly made their own fair share of mistakes in the past with issues like this. But yeah, giving it a little reset every so often, clear the RAM out, make sure that everything is running nice and quickly. But yeah, maybe once a week is probably about right, or when you actually notice that the computer slows down all of a sudden. Then just give it a restart and you'll be flying once again. Bibasic7 asks, iCave Answers, do you think Apple will ever go back to having two MacBook Air sizes? If they make a 12-inch and a 14-inch, that would satisfy people who both want a 12-inch MacBook back and a larger MacBook Air. I honestly don't know. I think the MacBook Air as a 13-inch, as kind of a vanilla, this is the size you get, works pretty well. I know my audience massively want to have a 15-inch version, but I just don't know if Apple wants to do it. I don't know if there's enough of a market for it. I think the vast majority of people that are buying a MacBook Air want the cheapest MacBook. They're looking for that price advantage more than anything else. That being said, I had the 11-inch MacBook Air. I loved it. A lot of people preferred the 13-inch to have that extra screen real estate. So maybe a 15-inch is a thing that people would want. But I would just want to make sure that Apple made it mechanically strong enough, because I think the strength of the chassis on larger devices, like when we first got the iPad Pro 12.9-inch, the flex on those was a bit of an issue. So you need to make sure that you've got enough physical strength in the chassis when you go into larger devices so that you're not cracking screens left, right and centre. Matias Heiberg Andersen asks, iCave Answers, do you think Apple will go with the strategy of releasing an entry-level M2 MacBook, nothing or Air, after the back to school, trying to make students buy the old current MacBook Air before releasing the new entry-level MacBook in the autumn? I don't think that that's the way that Apple wants to do it. I think Apple would love for people to have the latest and greatest. I don't think they're trying to clear through inventory. Apple is very good at producing the amount of stuff that they want. Typically, moving from like an M1 to an M2, if they weren't redesigning the devices, wouldn't add too much manufacturing cost, just moving up a chip generation. However, I think that in this case, we might well be getting our M2 MacBook Air with a redesign, which will increase their production costs, which they'll need to pay down. But I think they're also going to increase the price of the MacBook Air and keep the M1 around as well. So I think we might find that there isn't going to be that kind of push to wait. I think Apple will want to get the new ones out as quickly as possible because I think they're already behind schedule. Alric Samuel Godfrey asks, iCave Answers, Ming Chi Kuo recently tweeted that the non-Pro iPhone 14 models will stick with A15. This seems so un-Apple-like considering that the iPhone SE 3rd gen got the A15 chip. Since it's Guo, it's rather reliable information, but what's your take on this? So, I think we actually saw a little bit of differentiation last year with the A15 chips between the iPhone 13 and the 13 Pros, where the 13 Pros got more RAM, they got an extra GPU core active, and I think that's the way that Apple will probably pitch this. So they'll say, and the iPhone 14 gets the chip from our Pro iPhone 13s last year with the additional RAM, with the additional GPU power, with faster graphics performance, blah blah blah, and then they'll move on to the iPhone 15, then they'll move on to the iPhone 14 Pro and say, and this gets our new A16 chip. So actually, I think this does kind of make sense. and I think that's the way they'll do it. They'll have a differentiation between the Pro chips and the regular chips, but it will be more about the binning that they did last year with the A15s. That makes sense. I don't think it will actually matter at all to the general public. I think the people that understand the generations of chips inside are the people that generally are buying Pro iPhones anyway, because that's, it's the enthusiast market that cares. Anyone who's just looking for a new iPhone doesn't give a crap about the chip inside. They're still already a couple of generations ahead of all the Android phones in terms of speed, in terms of performance, in terms of efficiency, so I don't think it matters as much as everyone makes out. It's a surprise, but it also kind of makes sense. Rob asks, iCave answers, hi Dave, long time. I was wondering what you think about the studio display having an A13 SoC inside. It seems like an unnecessary expense, specifically since most likely the studio display will be connected to an M1 Mac, M1 Pro, M1 Max, M1 Ultra, which already has M1 that can do everything the A13 can do. Any real advantage to having the A13 inside in addition to the more powerful M1 in the computer by itself? But since it already has the A13 SoC, seems like a missed opportunity not to turn the studio display into an Apple TV or an iPad when not being used as a monitor. I've got a feeling that we just haven't seen what this is going to be used for yet. I think it is going to be something that pairs up really well with the iPad OS 16. We've heard rumours of floating windows coming to that when it's connected to an external display, and it might be that there's more features added to it, but it is more about processing for those displays, for the camera inside, being able to give all of the extra features if you pair it with an older Mac as well, and it just gives it that extra little bit of flexibility in future if they want to do something really cool with it. But let's be honest, when you're charging $1,600 for the display, the A13 inside is not really much of a cost. I think probably would cost Apple around about $20 these days to put an A13 inside. Probably not a big expense. Yuri Tech asks, iCave answers 16GB of RAM or 512GB of storage on an M1 MacBook. I also do light gaming on a PC, e.g. Star Trek Online, Roblox. Which one would be the better deal, I guess is the question here. So I would say go for the 16 gigs of memory. I think with external storage as small and tidy as you can get it these days with M.2 drives, I think being able to expand that later is a much better idea, rather than worrying about the amount of memory that you've got inside there, which cannot be upgraded in any way in future. You've always got the option of cloud storage, and you've always got the option of external storage or docking to a desk setup where you've got larger storage medium that you can use for videos, etc. Terry Clare asks, iCave answers, do you think the next series of Apple displays may use A15 or even A16 to support 120Hz? I don't think that the internal chip is going to be anything to do with that unless they literally use it for interpolating the extra frames. Basically what we were talking about previously, where animators at Disney, for example, used to kind of draw the main keyframes, and then in between artists would come in and fill in the gaps. So it could be that they use an internal chip to do something like that, where it's basically a smoothing layer. I'm not sure that that's what's going to happen, but that's a possibility. My thoughts are, though, that the internal chips, we know that the MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro and M1 Max can already deal with 120Hz, so there's no reason that they would need an extra chip to back that up, as far as I can see. Evan Rogers asks, iCave answers, what is the most superfluous thing we will hear about the Mac Studio over the coming days? I don't really know. I think comparing it to Windows chips in terms of gaming is a little bit pointless at the moment, because we just don't have the games to line up with it, and certainly not Apple Silicon native. What I would love to hear is that Apple has got their own game studio on board and are going to be producing games directly for their own silicon, or that they've built a framework that translates everything. But that all remains to be seen. Mr. L asks, iCave answers, so it seems I'm going to settle for a 24-inch iMac, as the 27-inch variety seems to be off the menu for the time being. Could you recommend a mounting arm with one with a full range of movement and possibly a Thunderbolt hub built in? Not a lot of in-depth information about something so utilitarian out there, sadly. Now, I haven't seen any mounting arms with built-in docks, but, I mean, cable tie one to the side of it. Mounting arms are much of a muchness. You're looking at a 27-inch display. They're not particularly heavy, so actually the vast majority of stuff should work. I mean, I've got a 40-inch TV attached to my one, and this moves around all over the place. We did do a video that gave detailed setup of my desk, but literally just look at the weight of the Mac that you're getting, find one that matches it. There's not a huge amount of variety in those. Don't go for the cheapest one on Amazon, but something mid-range and you'll be very, very happy, I think. Parkerfile asks, icave answers, do you think that the new Mac Pro will be two M1 Ultras replacing the two Radeon Pro W6800X Duos in the bottom of the current Mac Pro case in the same form factor of these GPUs? This configuration would be very similar to the original cheese grater and with the CPUs and memory at the bottom of the case. There seems to be enough power, cooling, bus bandwidth and space to do something like that. No, I think it's going to be a much smaller setup, and to be honest, the two M1 Maxes would have to be right next to each other on the board. When you're looking at 3 GHz clock speeds, and these run at about 3.2 from memory, you've only got about 10 centimeters of distance for the speed of light to kind of limit how far the traces can be between the chips if you want to be able to send information out and get it back between clock cycles. So that's going to be your limiting factor. I think it's going to be a much smaller form factor. I don't think there's going to be as much heat coming off of it, but I think we're probably going to be looking at something that looks a bit like the M1 Studio, like the Mac Studio, but maybe a little bit longer, or maybe a little bit taller. Maybe it's going to look like a couple of them stacked up, proper G4 Cube style in the next one. I'm not 100% sure, but that's my thoughts. I don't think it's going to look anything like the current Mac Pro in terms of size, volume, or using any components that exist for it right now. I also even think that the cool pattern on the front of the cheese grater is going to go away, because otherwise they probably would have put that on the back of the Studio as well. James Apple asks, where's our invite for WWDC 2022? I like to see what macOS Mammoth and iPad OS 16 is looking interesting with controlling the sizes of windows in the app. So we're likely to get the invites for WWDC next month. It's normally in April, I believe. They might still be holding off a little bit longer on this one to see if they're going to be able to do an in-person event finally. It really depends on how COVID is looking by then. The digital ones that they've been doing for the last few years have worked well, and it's opened it up to a lot more developers who haven't been able to attend in person in the past. So I think it might become some sort of a hybrid event where they have the digital side of it so that more developers can be involved, but also bringing certain people in and being able to do kind of in-person classes and workshops and that sort of thing as well. Because remember, WWDC is not just the event that we see, it's a whole week of workshops, and it is a full conference for developers to learn more about the new technologies and kind of get access to Apple's engineers to help them out with their apps. In terms of the controlling window sizes, yeah, that's interesting, but I honestly don't care. I don't know why everyone thinks that being able to resize a window makes an iPad more powerful. It makes absolutely zero sense to me. Randomness R asks, icave answers, any chance of iPhone 15 Pro Max being 7.2 inches? Yeah, there's a chance, I just don't know why they would. It won't fit in anyone's pockets. Josh asks, icave answers, hi Dave, what do you think that Apple will ever come out with their own TV? Absolutely not. There was huge rumours about this, Apple producing physical TV sets back in the day, but TVs are such a commodity item, they're literally a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. How cheap can we make this for? They're not replaced very often, so like once you actually have a TV, you keep it basically until it dies in most cases. The screen sizes are huge, they're not particularly nicely designed, and I don't think there's a huge amount of room for profit in them in most cases. I think it's just, yes, you could put Apple TV built into it, but the vast majority of TVs now, smart TVs, support things like AirPlay and have the Apple TV app, and what's the point, I guess, is what I'm getting at here. I don't know what they could do better than other TV makers and have people actually want to buy it, and they're also huge to ship around the world. And mein Deutschkurs mit Johannes asks, icave answers, why is Universal Control just on WLAN available and not on LAN? So the main reason for this is that Apple uses Wi-Fi Direct as part of the way that they're doing this. So Apple is kind of detecting the local stuff. So I'm guessing you're saying that it doesn't work on wired connections. However, my Mac Mini is on a wired connection, and if I put my iPad down next to it, it works. Obviously, the iPad is on a wireless connection, so I'm not 100% sure. but it confuses me that it's not. I guess because iPads don't have an Ethernet port. That might be it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been a bit of a quick fire icave answers. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.